Hello and welcome to Study with Sudhir. We are going to now embark on the longest chapter of Indian agriculture, in which there are lots of elements, and we would be doing it in several small videos so that it's easy for you to process. My suggestion and advice to you is that if you are a student who has a natural inclination towards a subject like botany, right, then you should attempt this chapter. You should definitely study this chapter in detail. Do not leave it out. So we are going to talk about the importance of Indian agriculture in this particular video. What a fabulous photograph. What does agriculture mean? Let's start from the ABC. Agriculture का मतलब क्या है? What is the definition? Now, agriculture is formed by two words, agar and culture. Agar means land and culture means cultivation. So, cultivation of the land. So, what is the definition? It is a science and art of cultivation of soil to grow crops and rear livestock. Livestock means cattle, goat, sheep, etc. Right? So, that is the definition. That's the science and art of cultivation of land oblique soil in order to grow crops and rear livestock. Now, next we come to what is the purpose of agriculture? Why is it that people over generations have resorted to agriculture? Mainly, obviously, the obvious answer is we need food to eat. So let's move to the next slide. The purpose of agriculture. This beautiful photograph that you see, these women sowing paddy. It is because for the production of food from land for human and animal consumption. 2/3 of Indian population depends on agriculture. This is an important statistic that you should be aware of. Tomorrow, some of you may want to appear for UPSC examinations. These are like the backbone of your preparatory material as far as the UPSC examination is concerned. You need to know about your country. You will be tested on that. So these kind of statistics, please, data, please remember. Directly or indirectly, depends on agriculture. Some of you, now you may say, we are not all farmers, but the people who are supplying the seeds, the saplings, the land, the tractor, the fertilizer, the pesticides, the insecticides, everything directly, the transport to the farm, from the farm, everything. So all that directly or indirectly constitutes 2/3 of the Indian population. It is the backbone of the Indian economy, right? Also, you see, it's not like, there may be a farmer, but most often the farmer's wife, the farmer's brother, the son, daughter, everyone contributes. So the son may be working somewhere, but he may also be spending time on the field. So that's how, and therefore it becomes the backbone of the Indian economy. India is essentially an agrarian economy. Please remember this word, agrarian. Use it in your answers. Now, how does India fare in agriculture, right? So if you're talking about India being an agrarian economy, let's find out how does India fare in agriculture. How does it do in agriculture? It's the highest producer of milk. Okay, again, data that you should be aware of and use it sensibly in your answers. It's the highest producer of milk. 22% of the global production comes from our country. It's the second highest producer of fruits and vegetables. It is 25% of the world's cotton and pulses production, right? Pulses means dal. It is the second highest producer of rice, which is 22% of the rice production of the world, and 13% of the wheat production in the world comes from India. So you should be aware of this data that rice, wheat, fruits, vegetables, pulses, cotton and milk is where India is pretty much on top. Okay. Even in the field of sugar, we are doing pretty well. In fact, there is a drought in Brazil, which invariably leads to Indian sugar companies doing better. Now, the Indian agriculture and the economy. Let's understand the correlation between the two, right? It provides employment to 58% of the labor force in the country, right? We already knew about the 2/3. So 58% of the labor force, right? 58 out of every 100 workers are somehow associated with the world of agriculture. It could be different areas, right? Growing, packing, transporting. Okay. Agri exports are 13% of the total value of the exports from the country. It contributes 17% of the gross domestic product, GDP, which is a barometer, a yardstick of how India is doing in terms of the economy, right? So it contributes 17% of that. And it depends on the monsoon. 55% of sown area is rainfed. Now, this statistic is important, and I'll explain how. Because every year in the month of April, early May is when the Indian Meteorological Department talks about how good or bad the monsoon will be. And all these farmers listen to that very carefully, because depending on what the Met Department forecast of the monsoon is, good hoga monsoon, bad hoga monsoon, it will be an okay monsoon, how fast the monsoon will cover most parts of the country after it hits the coast of Kerala, end of May, etc. Depending on that, they decide on when to sow, when to harvest. Everything is planned according to the monsoon. Why? Because only 45% of India's area is irrigated. 55% is actually dependent entirely on the rain god. So if the rain god is in a generous mood, okay, that will depend on how well the Indian agriculture does that particular year. Okay, so all these farmers that you see in this photograph depend entirely to a large extent on the monsoon. 45% is irrigated, so which means that India will have to improve its irrigation facilities like dams and canals, etc., in order to be able to do much better in the world of agriculture. Finally, the role of agriculture. Let's understand that. And the mnemonic that I've made for this is FREEM. F-R-E-E-M. FREEM. Okay, just remember this. It provides food and fodder. Food for you and me, fodder for the cattle, for any livestock. It supplies raw material for agro-based industries. What kind of raw material? It provides sugar for the sugar factories. It provides cotton for the textile mills. We have done that in detail in the agro-based and the mineral-based industries. It provides employment and exports. Employment we just spoke about. Exports again we just spoke about. And finally, it provides a market for farm-related industrial goods. What kind of industrial goods? Tractors, machinery, implements, fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, etc. So it's very interesting. The farmer is both a consumer. In this case, the farmer is a consumer, and this you realize the interlinkage between the agriculture sector and the industrial sector. Here the farmer is a consumer. Here the farmer is a producer who is providing the raw material. So you see, the farmer is at the center. He is providing raw material for the agro-based industries. He is a consumer of the products which are produced by the other kind of industry. So in that sense, the farmer becomes so much important. Okay, so we will pause video number 1 here. In the next video, we will look at the problems of the agriculture sector. We'll look at the reforms in the agriculture sector. We'll talk about Green Revolution and the National Agriculture Policy, and also the agricultural seasons and so on. So see you now in video number 2. Thank you very much for watching. Okay, in this video, we are going to talk about the problems of Indian agriculture. भारतीय कृषि में किस तरह की दिक्कतें हैं उसके बारे में हम बात करेंगे. We will talk in detail the problems of Indian agriculture. But let's start by understanding what is this phrase called agricultural yield. Now, agricultural yield is the quantity. This is the quantity of crop produced on 1 unit of land. Okay. And even though the agricultural yield of food grains in India has increased more than 4 times since 1950, that is the decade immediately after India's independence in 1947, it is still much low compared to many other developed countries in the world, and that is a point of concern. And through this entire video and the next video, we will talk about this in detail, both when we talk about the problems and what are the kind of reforms that are being undertaken. Let's take an example. For instance, Brazil's yield in rice has increased from some 1.3 tons per hectare. Don't note down anything. Everything is in the notes. In 1981 to 6 tons per hectare. So 1.3 in 1981 to 6 tons, 4.6 tons now in 2011. That is in 30 years, right? In the same 30-year period between 1981 and 2011, China's productivity increased from 4.3 tons per hectare, that is 1 hectare produced 4.3 tons. It increased it to 2011 to 6.7 tons per hectare. How did India fare? India moved from 2 tons per hectare to 3.6 tons per hectare. That is, it did not double it like the way Brazil managed to more than double it, right? So that is something which is a point of concern. And what are really the reasons why India's productivity is seen as low? One is environmental factors, economic factors, institutional factors, and technological factors. So we will now get into details about each one of the factors. Let's look at the environmental factors, the environmental reasons for India's low agricultural yield. Okay, so the first one is unreliable and erratic rainfall. In the first video, I had already spoken about how 55% of India's sown area is rain-fed. So you're depending entirely on the monsoon, right? Here you see dark clouds. So obviously, this farmer has much to hope for, right? And he's sowing paddy, right? So, but he's depending entirely on the rainfall, which is largely unreliable and erratic. Erratic means something which is sometimes strong, sometimes not very strong, sometimes unseasonal. Sometimes what happens is that the rain comes at the wrong time, as a result of which the crop which is ready for harvest, but it's probably another 10 days. So if the rain comes today, it will end up damaging it because it is not yet completely 100% ready for harvest. So unreliable and erratic kind of rainfall. So unseasonal rains can also create that problem. Apart from the fact that if there is drought, your entire crop goes for a 6. You cannot grow anything at all. And this happens a lot in areas like Telangana, Vidarbha in Maharashtra. In fact, I have done a whole lot of documentary work on drought related issues as far as Indian farmers are concerned. It leads them to a money debt trap with money lenders, private money lenders. They are not able to repay. They end up dying by suicide. So it's a very sad story in that sense, the kind of problems that Indian agriculture and farmers face. Also, a related issue is lack of irrigation facilities, that we do not have that many dams and canals to provide sufficient kind of an efficient kind of irrigation facilities. And the free power supply. See, what happens is that many governments have started giving free power supply because they want to get the vote of the farmer, right, at election time. So what do? They say that we will give you free power, right, for your entire agricultural operations, etc. Now, what happens as a result of free power? And if you travel in rural areas, you will find this to a large extent. In fact, one of the largest number of borewells in the entire country is in Telangana. So what happens is that Telangana kind of state, which has benefited from free power supply since 2004, is that they dig more borewells because power supply is free, right? So they dig more borewells, they exhaust the groundwater, and once it dries off, they will dig another borewell. So they'll keep on digging more and more borewells in the same field, in the same kind of area. So the groundwater table keeps on getting depleted as a result. So that is another major issue. And also related to that is, water guzzling crops like paddy, like sugarcane, which need a lot of water. Now, sugarcane kind of crop is grown in areas like Vidarbha, right? Again, sugarcane is grown in Maharashtra, but it's a water guzzling crop and there is not sufficient water, right? So that has adversely affected the water table in many parts. I hope this is clear, and this affects the small farmer and the marginal farmer in a big way, okay, especially when bore wells and tube wells go dry as a result. Third environmental factor is soil erosion. Now, soil erosion, what is the effect of soil erosion? You understand what is soil erosion? I mean, you would have read it in the earlier chapters in geography. That is when soil kind of, the top layer, etc., keeps on getting denuded because of various other factors. And as a result of which there is soil erosion. So that results in loss of valuable cropland, right? It decreases the fertility of the soil. The soil is not fertile enough to be able to support the crops with the necessary nutrients, right? Whatever be the crop. So overgrazing, indiscriminate cutting of trees, Faulty land use practices. What are the faulty land use practices that we can talk about? For instance, lack of crop rotation. That is, what happens is that if you're growing paddy, in between you should grow some pulses, then you should grow paddy again, then you should grow maybe some vegetable crops. So when you have crop rotation, it is good for it's considered good for the soil. Any agricultural officer will tell you that it's good for the soil. So if you keep on growing only the same crop again and again, it is not considered good for the nutrient value of the soil itself, right? Or wrong plowing. If you don't do the plowing, what this farmer is doing is plowing. If you don't do it the right way, that is also bad for the soil. So soil is not something which you can play around with. It is a scientific process, which is why you have many agricultural officers who will advise farmers like these on exactly the right way of doing agriculture, right? Apart from the experience that someone like him would have, but scientific inputs are very important, right? So this is something which they should be aware of: soil erosion and soil degradation. So this is another environmental factor which is one of the reasons for the low agricultural yield among farms in India. Okay, loss of soil fertility, soil erosion, soil degradation. I hope I'm making this clear. The fourth point is methods of cultivation. What are the methods of cultivation which are adopted by the farmers which lead to low agricultural yield? One, of course, is old and inefficient ways of farming, inadequate irrigation facilities, the inability of farmers to buy good quality seeds. The seed quality is so important. If you buy inferior quality seeds, obviously that will also reflect in the kind of crop that they eventually grow. So that also has an effect. Then demand for food crops, that more and more farmers prefer to go in for rice and wheat instead of other kind of crops, and diversifying the kind of crops, right? So due to lack of crop rotation, what I told you, this results in the quality of the soil, the nutrient value of the soil fertility getting decreased, getting depleted. The last point here is reduction in net sown area. Now, what exactly happens is that, and this has been happening in certain parts of the country, that farmers are moving away from agriculture to other professions. So you have farms land, and this happens most often on the outskirts of a city. There is demand for land, for housing sites, etc. So if a farmer thinks that, okay, I'm not making much money from my farm, I will sell off the land at a good price to a builder and make money and go and work somewhere in the city in whatever way. Okay, so that is happening to a large extent, especially on the city outskirts, which is why you see one of the reasons for the prices of vegetables and fruits going up is because many of these farms outside the city, on the outskirts of the city, used to be where the vegetables used to get grown. Now the area is shrinking. So as a result of that, the prices of vegetables are also growing up. So everything is correlated, and you should be aware on and be able to make these correlations. Okay. Farmers have also shown a tendency to go in for cash crops. Crops which they think will get them better value, like say cotton. As a result of which the area under say horticulture, under food crops is kind of coming down. Okay, so that is another environmental reason. Now, let's now move to the next one, which is the institutional factors why India has a low agricultural yield. Now, the small and fragmented land holdings. Please understand this, and I'll go through this a little slowly for you to be able to understand. Now, majority of the land holdings in the country are small, that is half acre. Okay, maximum 1 acre, which are like small holdings. So you have a lot of small and marginal farmers. Okay, the land holdings are fragmented. That means they're divided, right? So what happens is that when you are a small farmer, you do not have the funds to be able to buy better quality machinery, right? Use the plow instead of using a tractor, right? They are unable to buy new farm machinery. They cannot practice modern agriculture. So scientific cultivation with improved techniques and better quality seeds is not possible. Okay, so that is one of the reasons, institutional reasons. Institutional means systemic reasons why there is low agricultural yield. The second one is exploitation of farmers. Most farmers, and this is another big issue, most farmers are not landlords. This man may not be owning this land. This man could well be a tenant farmer. Tenant farmer is the term which is used. Tenant farmer is someone who, I don't own a land, you own a land. I say, I will take the loan, your land on rent. So I become a tenant farmer by paying you a certain amount of money, or if I don't have the money to give you as rent straight away, what I will do is I will say 50% of the produce of, say, paddy or wheat or sugarcane, whatever I grow on that piece of land, 50% or 40%, whatever be the terms and conditions, I will give it to you in lieu of the rent for this particular land. So the responsibility of ensuring a good crop falls on my head. It's a pressure on my head, right? Because I have to pay you that, right, as rent. So the landlord is happy. He gets the produce or the rent or either cash straight away or crop, and that he can sell and make money out of it, right? Whereas the entire responsibility is on the tenant farmer, and the entire system is skewed in favor of the landlord, and that's what is happening. For instance, in Telangana, you have a system, a scheme called the Raitu Bandhu. Raitu Bandhu, they give a certain sum of money. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it is 12,000 rupees in a year per acre to the landlord. Now, the problem is that the government does not give it to the tenant farmer who is actually tilling the land. He gives it to the landlord in whose name the land is there, right? So this guy, so the landlord ki chandi hai. He gets money from the government, he gets money from the farmer also as rent, right? Whereas the entire responsibility is on the farmer. So the exploitation of the small and marginal farmer is another major institutional reason for low agricultural yield, because he does not have every money, all the money he's giving as rent. Where will he have the money to kind of get better farm machinery or better quality seeds? And they invariably end up getting reduced to bonded labor. Or in some cases, what happens is that many of these farmers sell their land and then they become labor on their own land. That also happens to a large extent in many states. Let's now move ahead. See, I'm dipping a lot into my own experience of having covered agriculture. So I'm hoping that you're able to understand the concept well. When you understand it, it will be easier for you to explain it, especially in a subjective type paper. Okay, that's my entire intention. What a beautiful photograph. Now, what are the economic factors responsible for India's low agriculture yield? The first one is subsistence agriculture. Now, what exactly is subsistence agriculture? Subsistence agriculture is basically marked by small and scattered land holdings, which I just now explained, and use of primitive tools and practices. That is, पुराने ख्यालात वाले जो जिस तरह के बाप दादा ने फार्मिंग की थी उसी तरह से फार्मिंग करते रहेंगे. What earlier generations did, we continue with the same way of practicing agriculture, which means no fertilizers, no high quality seeds, no pesticides, lack of irrigation facilities, right? And this again results in low productivity. And subsistence agriculture mein what happens is that the output, that whatever produce they produce is consumed by the family itself. It's not given out to the market. So it's very self-sufficient. I grow, I consume, the family itself, right? So it doesn't go into the market. So in that sense, it does not become part of the agriculture economy of the country, right? So that is again not something which is beneficial to the Indian economy. The second one is human elements. Now, poor farmers who are under debt borrow money from private lender at exorbitant rates of interest. Then you have the lack of education, lack of literacy, lack of understanding of how farming is to be done. They do not follow modern methods of agriculture, do not purchase modern equipment. There is no security against the failure of crops, the crop insurance scheme, etc. They don't quite understand, and they don't have the funds to invest in agriculture. Credit to the farmers. This is very important. I have seen terrible scenes where the moneylender will come and insult the family, for having borrowed 20,000, 50,000, 75,000, abuse the family, abuse the wife, abuse, it becomes, and in villages, etc., if you're humiliated, if you're insulted before the entire village, It's a matter of prestige for the farmer, because the farmer is so emotionally bound to the field, and he feels betrayed that the field is not kind of helping him out, and he ends up drinking the same pesticide which he has bought in order to put sprinkle on the field. Most often, at least in Telangana, parts of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, maximum deaths unfortunately happen when they drink consume pesticide. I've covered umpteen number of cases. I mean, you have villages after villages in Telangana and Andhra and Karnataka, North Karnataka, where you have villages of widows, the farmers, dying at the age of 28, 30 kind of thing, leaving behind small children. Farming, agriculture in India, unfortunately, is not a very lucrative profession. Unfortunately, it's not even well respected, and that's the tragedy. I remember some tweet by somebody saying that, when the farmers were protesting that, why are farmers, why do we need farmers, for their food? Oh, they produce food. But I thought I got food from Swiggy's and Zomato, right? That's unfortunately the notion that many of the youngsters seem to have. At least that tweet seemed to indicate that. Now, the credit to the farmers is the banks are not willing to lend to the farmers because they don't have sufficient collaterals, in the sense that, girvi kya rakhoge? What will you keep as mortgage, in case if you're not able to repay the loan? So since the banks, public sector banks, say State Bank of India or Canara Bank or any of the public sector banks, since they insist on a lot of paperwork, what do the farmers end up doing? They start going to the private money lender, who is a person of the same village. So he will know exactly what he does, and he'll keep coming and harassing them every few days, right? So the lack of a good credit system is another big problem. Finally, globalization. What does it mean? Indian economy has opened up, okay. But what had happened was it led to the withdrawal of subsidies to Indian agriculture, in the sense that governments were not just saying fertilizer subsidy on various other implements, etc., keep coming down. So as a result of which, the farmers are now at the mercy of the corporate sector, the corporates, right? And the impact has been on the cost of production of crops due to the reduction in subsidy. Subsidy kam hogi, so the cost of production of crops ends up going up. If a fertilizer bag was available for say 1,000 rupees earlier, now it may end up costing the farmer 1,300 rupees. So that has a direct impact on the produce that he is, the output that he is having. And the prices in the international market are declining because other countries use sophisticated farm machinery. Indians do not use the other institutional factors that we spoke about. Finally, let's come to the technological factors. Let's come to the technological factors. What are the technological factors because of which India has a low agriculture yield? Old and inefficient ways of farming. This would be seen as one of them, right? Wooden plows, use of bulls, lack of mechanization, right? Bulls and wooden plows being used, lack of mechanization. These are all reasons for the low agricultural yield as far as India is concerned. I hope it's clear till here, and we will now proceed to talk about the reforms in Indian agriculture, and that would promise to be quite an interesting video, because you need to know what are the positive steps which have been taken, despite which Indian agriculture we wouldn't say it's really performing very well. So now I'll see you in the video dealing with reforms in Indian agriculture. Okay, now we are going to take a look at the reforms which have been made as far as Indian agriculture is concerned. We've already dealt with the importance of agriculture. We've also dealt with the problems that Indian agriculture faces. So why are reforms so important as far as Indian agriculture is concerned? Why do we need to take those important steps as far as Indian farming and Indian agriculture is concerned? So the main point that you need to understand is that over the years, there has been a fall in the contribution of agriculture to the gross domestic product, the GDP. And this is a matter of concern. ये चिंता का विषय है, और ये इसलिए है क्योंकि अगर GDP में fall होगा, if there is a fall in the GDP, it has an effect on the entire economy. Why? Go back to what I told you in the first video on the importance of agriculture to the economy, because 2/3 of the population of India is directly or indirectly connected with agriculture, right? So it has a spiraling effect. One after the other, everything starts getting affected, because the farmer is both a producer for the agro-based industries, he is a consumer of the other kind of industries for farm machinery, etc. So it leads to a decline in other sectors of the Indian economy. So in order to arrest this decline, what the government has done is to set up agricultural universities, veterinary services. There is the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, the Kisan call centers to deal with the farmers, listen to their grievances, listen to their problems, and try to provide them with solutions. So there is a constant interaction that takes place between different wings of the Agriculture Department and Ministry of the Government of India and the state governments with the farmers, right? So that you can kind of, address their problems once you deal with them on a day-to-day basis. There are the agriculture scientific officers who go to the farmer. Suppose a farmer says, somewhere in the middle of, somewhere Srikakulam in north coastal Andhra Pradesh or somewhere in Odisha, right? Saying that, my farm has got this problem of pests. He doesn't know what to do. He'll call up the agricultural science officer, or he will call up the Kisan call center, and they will send the scientific officer who will say, okay, you apply this pesticide, this will kind of get taken care of. So that kind of a collaborative approach is what is required. Okay, so those are the kind of reforms that we are talking about. Next, we come to a very important topic, and that is green revolution. What exactly is meant by green revolution? Ye tha kya? This was initiated in the 1960s. So we are talking of over 50 years ago when the green revolution took place. It resulted in a manifold increase. Manifold means multiple times increase in farm production and productivity, right? Compared to what it was at the time of independence, right? Especially in crops like wheat and rice. And that helped transform the economy. Why? Because when India became independent, the belief was that this country, this newly independent country, after partition, is a food scarce country. It is not producing enough to feed its own citizens. So from that, green revolution helped in converting India from a food scarce country to a self-sufficient country. We started producing enough food to feed our entire growing population. And population के मामले में तो India काफी बड़ा है, right? So that's why the green revolution is so significant. Okay, so hunger and poverty, those kind of issues were kind of taken care of. Now, what are the key elements of green revolution? This is something which you need to understand. Capital, funds, technology, modern scientific methods. They were kind of used. So use of large capital and technological inputs, and also modern scientific methods. High yielding seed varieties, right? Which would kind of ensure that you get a good bumper crop by using a high quality seed, not an inferior quality seeds. Fertilizers, insecticide, pesticides that you take care of. Though I would say now the trend is more towards organic farming, where you do not use these fertilizers and pesticides. Because I'll tell you what, just slight digression I'll take. There are a large number of cancer cases that were reported from Guntur. Okay, people who had grown up in Guntur and now they were settled in different parts of India, Delhi, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Chennai, Kolkata, wherever. And then there was investigation. Why were these people who had roots in Guntur getting cancer at this stage of their life when they were, in their 50s, 60s, whatever? And then it was found that the chilies which are grown, now Guntur in Andhra Pradesh is a major chilies market, Lal Mirch. If you go to the chilies market there, you keep coughing because that pungent thing. So the air is thick with the chilies. So I remember going there and trying to do interviews. There the people have got used to it. They don't cough. But you will keep on coughing because you are not used to that kind of an atmosphere of, the chili being in the air, right? So your eyes will be burning, you'll keep on coughing all the time. Anyway, so that chili crop in Guntur would use a lot of fertilizers, a lot of pesticides, and that had got into the food chain of the city, the district over so many years, and that is what was reflecting in cancer later on in their life. In fact, US had even temporarily banned chilies from Guntur to be sent there, to be exported there, because of not meeting food norms. There was too much of pesticides which were being used. For pesticides, not fertilizers. Okay, so that is something I just kind of digressed. Marketing, storage, rural electrification. Rural electrification very important, so that you will have electricity for the farmers in order to kind of take care of their different needs for farming, etc. Marketing, that is, you are able to kind of say, okay, I know exactly where I'll get the best price for my crop of cotton. Storage, whether there is cold storage available, especially for vegetables and fruits, etc., right? Or something like flowers, that's also part. Floriculture is also part of farming, right? So storage units is another part of the green revolution, key elements of the green revolution. Agriculture credit supply, consolidation of land holdings. Credit supply, we've already spoken about it in an earlier video, whether you will be able to get funds for them to do farming effectively and consolidate, not like small holdings, but slightly large holdings, so that it's easier for farmers to actually do farming in a significant manner, not in small quarter acre or half acre kind of plots, which kind of lead to their own peculiar problems. Now, what has been the impact of green revolution, or what was the impact of green revolution on the agriculture economy of the country? It helped it move from a subsistence form of agriculture. I've told you about subsistence form of agriculture. Please refer to the earlier video. And it moved to a commercial form of agriculture, which was more market oriented. Commercial, okay, I'm going to grow this much of sugarcane, I'll be able to give it to this sugar factory, and I'll be able to make this kind of money. So when you know exactly this is what is going to be the output, say after 4 months, I will put the necessary inputs accordingly, right? So it was not like, I grow and I eat, consume it by the family, not like that. So it was a more commercial form of agriculture, which started as a result of the green revolution, and it was more market oriented, and it also created more employment. It increased the production and the productivity, okay, and it led to self-sufficiency in food grains. Increase in rural prosperity, the villages, they started getting more prosperous as a result, and also there was more adoption of technology. There are higher returns from the agriculture sector, okay, as a result of which the farmer had more money in his pocket. However, there was also criticism against the green revolution. So let's look at what was the criticism against green revolution. It caused land degradation. That was one of the criticism against green revolution. See, each one of this can come as a question. So what I've done in the notes PDF is to give it to you in blocks so that you know exactly what it is. This video is important for you to understand. Once you have understand, go through the notes, you will be more than sufficient, because as I said in an earlier video, it has been taken from 4 different sources: my own research, Morningstar, Frank Brothers, and Evergreen. So it's kind of well covered in terms of notes. The criticism against green revolution is that it caused land degradation due to overuse of pesticides and fertilizers. It also ended up drying the aquifers. Now, aquifers are the body of porous rocks. Porous rocks or sediment which is saturated with groundwater. That's the definition of an aquifer. So it ended up drying the aquifers because of overuse of the soil of the land. That is what was happening as a result of the green revolution, and vanishing biodiversity, because most farmers were kind of focusing on a few crops, right? So that kind of a crop rotation was not there as should be desirable today. In today's day and age, it is there, but not at the time when it was started. Okay. What were the steps taken to promote agriculture in India apart from Green Revolution? Green Revolution is one part of it, but apart from Green Revolution, what were the steps taken in order to promote agriculture in India? The first one was land reforms. Zamindari was abolished. Zamindaris, because zamindars used to own the land, okay, and people used to be bonded labor. So land reforms were initiated in many states. P.V. Narasimha Rao, our former Prime Minister, is one of those who was at the forefront of many of these land reforms, at least in United Andhra Pradesh, when he was Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh also for a brief while. Again, we are talking about the 1970s. Then there was consolidation of land holding. This is another point that we talk about, larger land holdings. Creation of irrigation infrastructure, very important, more dams and canals being built. Installation of sprinklers and drip irrigation. Now, why is this important? Especially in drought-prone areas where there isn't sufficient water. So what they would do is that they would use sprinklers and drip irrigation system in order to irrigate the land. Then MSP, minimum support price, MSP. Please remember this full form, for crops in order to ensure adequate returns to the farmers. Then you also have Kisan call centers being established for farmers to get in touch with what is happening, what are the problems, what are the possible solutions to those problems. Subsidy on fertilizers, that is fertilizers being made available to the farmers at a lower cost. Promote soil fertility and organic farming. This is again very important. Organic farming is something more new which has come up, but this is important. Soil fertility for longevity of the soil. Better credit facilities so that they are not dependent on the private money lender, but banks can actually lend them money. And cooperatives. This is very important. Amul in Gujarat is one great example of small and marginal farmers coming together and forming a cooperative. And now what we have also is a large number of cooperative banks, especially in states like Maharashtra and Gujarat. This is a very strong movement that cooperatives are there, which will help lend money and support the small and marginal farmer. So finally we come to the National Agriculture Policy. Now this was announced in July 2000. Okay, so we are talking of more than 2 decades old. And what does it kind of look forward to? It envisages 4% growth rate in agriculture per annum. Okay, these are paddy fields. This is from Kerala, as I can see. Yep. This I don't know from where it is. So this was the National Agriculture Policy. So this is something very important, so that it gives a broad framework. What it does is to ek dhancha bana deta hai. It gives a framework so that the farmers know, okay, this is the agriculture policy of the country, and if I do within this framework, I would get the necessary support from the different agencies of the government of India or any of the state government. So let's look at some of the other major salient features of the National Agriculture Policy, the NAP. Better use of India's natural resources. Obviously, that what you do is that you promote more technically sound, economically viable, environmentally non-grading, because environment is now a major factor which probably wasn't there 50 years ago, right? And use judiciously and properly India's natural resources, land, water, groundwater, the genetic biodiversity of India, very important, because what is happening is that there are foreign agencies which come and patent stuff which is grown in India, right? So whether it is the ginger, whether it's the turmeric which is grown in India, etc., it is the genetics of the country, genetic biodiversity of the country. In fact, there is a village called Pastapur near Hyderabad which does some fabulous work on this. It's called the Deccan Development Society by a good friend of mine called P.V. Satish, who has kind of, what he has done over the years is that he has kind of reintroduced and saved some of the seeds which our forefathers used to use in farming. So you're bringing back many of those millet seeds, ragi, bajra, jawar, etc., and they are seen as much more nutritious than paddy and wheat, right? So that way, some very interesting scientific experiments being done. Participation of the private sector, right, in order to take care of, either get into it as corporate farming or contract farming, and also land leasing. You give land to a firm, it will be able to probably give you more, and everything will be on pakka paper. It will not be like word of mouth and private money lender kind of business. Then you minimize price fluctuations, right? It's not like, one season you are selling paddy at X rupees per quintal or whatever, or per ton, and another thing it has crashed down so much, right? It won't be kind of varying. Then you protect the plant varieties, again very important from the genetic point of view, from the patenting point of view. That's something very important through legislation and patents. Then you encourage animal husbandry and horticulture. This is very important. Animal husbandry, again, the government of Telangana supports the many of the sheep rearers by giving them sheep, right? To kind of take care. So it kind of provides a family with a means of livelihood. Okay. Similarly, horticulture, you support the horticulture, you get and make them, say that, okay, this is where you will grow. This is will be your market in the city, where people will be able to give you a slightly good price for the kind of effort that you put in order to grow the cauliflower, the cabbage, the ladyfinger, and the brinjal, and the, potato and the tomatoes. So you do that, and there's a ready-made market. There are these Raitu markets also, which are there in many cities of the country today, right? Where farmers bring their produce directly to the market and are able to sell them. So the consumer, the urban consumer like you and me, gains, because we end up getting fresh farm produce, and we are also able to give a better price to the farmer. And this will be possible if the transportation time is less, or if there are better storage facilities, right? So everything is linked. I hope you are able to get the bigger picture, right? Okay, so the other factors are like also reviewing the tax structure, right? So that, the taxation, whether on fertilizers and other kind of thing on land, etc., is taken care of. Rural electrification, we've already spoken about. The insurance policies, so that, if somebody is losing a lot of, because of bad monsoon or erratic monsoon, he can claim insurance. Also the crop insurance scheme. And also between states, there should be no restriction on the movement of agricultural related commodities, right? So if in agriculture commodities, hey, for instance, a ton of pineapples is being sent from town A to town B, there should not be any restriction on that kind of movement. Okay, so you promote agriculture in that way. For instance, when the whole thing came about Pepsi, for instance, that they wanted to kind of make orange juice and stuff like that. So, there is a market for oranges, right? That Pepsi will buy these many tons of oranges from these many farmers. Similarly, when they wanted to make, Kisan wanted to make tomato ketchup, so the tomato farmer has a ready-made buyer, because the corporate wants to buy that many tomatoes in order to be able to manufacture tomato sauce and tomato ketchup. So you see, those kind of linkages between the agro-based industry and the farmer becomes that much more important under the National Agriculture Policy, in order to be able to help the farmer make good money for the kind of effort that he or she is putting in on the farm. I hope this particular part of the chapter reforms in Indian agriculture is clear with the kind of examples I've given. Please go through the notes. It's given both in point form, also in question and answer form, so that it will be easier for you to understand and remember and recall. Thank you very much for watching. Okay, now we are going to look at the agricultural seasons in India. This is another part of the entire agriculture chapter, right? Now, mainly there are two agricultural seasons in India, the Kharif season and the Rabi season, right? So the Kharif and the Rabi season are seen as the two main seasons, though there is another one called Zaid, which is somewhere in between. We will come to that. So what is it about the Kharif season? Now, Kharif crop is sown in the months of June and July, and the harvest takes place in September, October, right? Which means it is essentially a summer crop, and it also means that it uses the southwest monsoon that comes into the country. It starts around the 31st of May, first week of June, hits the Kerala coast, and then it starts spreading and covering most parts of the country. So it's essentially a summer crop, uses the main monsoon. Which are the different crops which are grown as part of the Kharif season? You have paddy, rice, millets, different kinds of millets, which would be jawar, bajra, ragi, maize, cotton, sugarcane, jute, tobacco. Okay, these are the main crops which are grown as part of the Kharif season. Let's come to the Rabi season. Rabi season is where the crops are sown in October, November. So you see, this gets harvested in September, October, right? And this starts in October, November. So there would be a slight gap between the Kharif and the Rabi season. Most often, it's almost overlapping, depends on which farmer harvests his crop when. October, November, and harvested in the months of March, April, right? So this is essentially a winter crop. And what are the crops which are grown as part of the Rabi season? Wheat, mustard, peas, potato, barley. Okay, so these are the Rabi season crops. Now the third category of crops is the Zaid or Zaid, however you may pronounce it. Now these are essentially quick yielding or seasonal crops, right? And most often they are grown between the Kharif and the Rabi crops, right? Though there is a difference between how North India does it and how South India does it because of the difference in the kind of temperatures that we have. Now, in North India, you have a Zaid Kharif and a Zaid Rabi also, okay? And these are mainly seasonal vegetables and fruits. So the Zaid Kharif crops are grown are sown in August, September. That is just when it is about to end, September kind of thing. They may sow it at that time and harvested in December, January. So you may kind of make use of the gap between Kharif and Rabi in that sense, right? They need warm, dry weather. So you have before the onset of harsh winter, right? And longer day, because once it's winter, then you will have shorter days, right? And mustard is a Zaid Kharif crop as well. It's also grown as a, apart from being used as a Rabi crop, it's sometimes grown as a Zaid Kharif crop also. How is the Zaid Rabi crop? Now they are sown at the beginning of the hot season in mid-February, March, and harvested in April, May. And these include summer vegetables, watermelons, cucumbers, kheera. Okay. Now in South India, the temperature is uniformly high throughout the year, right? Unlike in North, where end of November, December, January and half of February is generally very cold. It's not so cold in southern states. So it is uniformly high throughout the year. So farmers can grow these kind of tropical crops, any kind of vegetables, watermelon, whatever, throughout the year, so long as the soil contains enough moisture. So Zaid crops therefore become the extra crop apart from Kharif and Rabi that the farmers can grow, and this helps them to supplement, add to their income. I hope the three kinds of agricultural seasons are clear. Now let's move to some of the factoids about Indian agriculture, right? Food crops like rice and wheat mainly occupy 65% of the cropped area, the sown area. These two are the bulk, though as I explained in an earlier video, many people are moving towards more cash crops, commercial crops like cotton, etc., which would yield them more money. Though paddy and wheat still continue to be the Amitabh Bachchan of the Indian farming sector. They contribute 50% of the total value of the agricultural production. Okay, so in that sense, rice and wheat become extremely significant. India is also self-sufficient in food grains, and these include rice, wheat, millets, pulses, maize, etc. Now the term cereals. What is the term cereals? Cereals include all grass-like plants that have edible starchy seeds. This is the definition of cereals. They have high nutritional value and they are easy to cultivate, and they are known as the staff of life. Okay, this is a phrase which is used for all cereals. So rice, wheat, maize, millets all fall under cereals, and they form the basic diet of mankind, especially in India, everywhere, in fact, all over the world, but definitely in most parts of India. India is third in the production of cereals in the world. This is important, and 11% of the total global production is done in India. In terms of cropped area in India, cereals is there almost more than 50% of the total area under cultivation. Okay, now let's look at the main crops which are grown in India. This is a cotton crop. Okay, see the difference between SWS and other channels, whatever apps, etc. put out is that we don't just put out textbook knowledge. Most of what we cover, whether it be in civics, be it in geography, uh, be it in biology, it actually, the difference that we make is that we have practical experience on the field. This is my wife and she has done lots of work in the field of agriculture, lots of award-winning documentaries. Here you see with the chili crop. So chilies is not for us something which you have seen only in the textbook. We have seen and felt it. These are all her photographs. The paddy crop, right? So we have been there in the fields, and I would strongly recommend everyone, each one of you out here, to go into the field. As we say in journalism, get your hands dirty, feel the earth, feel the crops, then you'll get a better idea. So many girls, child labor very rampant in cotton farming in many parts of the country. So this is the cotton, the flowers which they pluck when it is ripe for flowering. So when you're talking about the main crops, which are the main crops? Cereals, as we already mentioned, paddy, wheat, jawar, gram, bajra, pulses, ragi, etc. Then you have oil seeds, which is groundnut. Groundnut is grown mainly. I've done a lot of stories around the groundnut crop in Anantapur, which is in the southern part of Andhra Pradesh. Mustard, sunflower. Then plantations include coffee, rubber, tea, which we have done in the tea gardens of Assam. Rubber in many parts of Kerala, the rubber plantations which are there. Coffee, of course, large part also in Karnataka. Then you have the cash crops, which include sugarcane, grown mainly in Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, in my part of the country, in southern Karnataka, North Karnataka, Bidar, Mandya, Mysore districts. Then you have the spices, which include chilies, pepper, a lot grown in Kerala, turmeric in Nizamabad district of Telangana. It's a major turmeric center. If you go and see, you can smell haldi in the air, yellow, lot of yellow out there in Nizamabad district. Ginger, adrak. Then you have the fiber crops like cotton and jute. So these are the main crops. I have written the table out there, but you will get an idea about what it looks like when you actually, for instance, this kind of chili, pungent chili kind of thing is grown in many parts of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. It's pretty common. Okay, so that's as far as the agricultural seasons in India is concerned. I hope this is clear. We'll now need to get into specifics of many of the crops that you need to know, whether it is cotton, whether it's rice, wheat, etc. We'll get into the specific sugarcane. We'll get into the specifics of what each crop needs in terms of desired temperature, the kind of soil, etc. See you then. Thank you very much for watching.